The elevator stopped so suddenly that the lights flickered twice, like a dying heartbeat, and then everything went still. For a second, I thought it was just another glitch in the old corporate building on Harbor Avenue, the kind everyone joked about but secretly feared. But when the faint hum of movement didn't return and the digital floor number froze between 12 and 13, a tight silence swallowed the small metal box. I felt it in my chest first, the awareness that I was trapped. And not alone. Standing 2 feet away from me, dressed in a sharp cream blazer and holding her phone like it was a lifeline, was my boss, Arya Malhotra. She was the kind of woman people described in whispers. Young CEO, ruthless strategist, ice in her veins. She had taken over Varelli Tech at 32 and doubled its profits in 2 years. Employees admired her from a safe distance. No one really knew her. And now we were sealed inside a metal cube suspended above the city. She pressed the emergency button. Nothing. She checked her phone. No signal. And then, after a long pause that felt heavier than the air itself, she looked up at the small black dome in the corner of the ceiling. She exhaled slowly. Then she leaned slightly closer and whispered, almost to herself, "No cameras in here, so tell me the truth. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel." Stories like this remind us that even the coldest walls can crack when honesty finds its way in. I had joined Varelli Tech 6 months earlier. My name is Rohan Afsar. I wasn't brilliant or bold. I wasn't one of those fast-talking sales sharks or charismatic presenters. I was the quiet analyst in the back corner of the office who stayed late, triple-checked spreadsheets, and avoided unnecessary eye contact. But 3 weeks ago, everything changed. A confidential proposal had leaked to a competitor. Millions of dollars were lost. A major partnership collapsed overnight. And somehow, my name had ended up on the internal audit report. I still remember the meeting where Arya had looked at me across the glass conference table, her expression unreadable, and asked if I had accessed the file outside authorized hours. I had, but only because she had asked me to review it after midnight when a last-minute modification came in. I didn't defend myself properly. I froze under the weight of the accusations and the silence of my coworkers. Fear does strange things to a person. It steals words. It shrinks you. Since then, I'd felt the distance. The stares. The unspoken verdict. And now here we were, alone, suspended between floors like two secrets no one wanted to confront. She lowered her hand from the ceiling camera dome and looked directly at me. Not like a CEO. Not like an interrogator. Just like a person who was tired of guessing. Her voice softened, but it carried weight. She said she needed the truth. Not the corporate version. Not the rehearsed explanation. The real one. I swallowed. My throat felt dry. The emergency lights cast a dim amber glow across her face. For the first time, I noticed the faint shadows under her eyes. The small crease between her brows. She looked exhausted. I told her everything. I told her about the midnight email she had sent me with the revised numbers. I told her about logging into the secure drive from home because the system was slow at the office. I told her about forwarding a draft to my personal email so I could reformat the data more efficiently. I admitted that I hadn't thought it would matter. And then I told her the part one hadn't said in that meeting. I told her I never betrayed the company. That I would never risk the only job that helped me pay for my mother's dialysis treatments. That Varelli wasn't just a stepping stone for me. It was survival. The words spilled out faster than I expected. Months of anxiety and humiliation compressed into one breathless confession. She listened without interrupting. Outside the elevator, the building was silent. It was a bright Tuesday afternoon. The sun was high. People were in meetings. Phones were ringing somewhere. But inside that metal box, time felt suspended. When I finished, I expected skepticism. Or anger. Instead, she leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes briefly. Then she did something that shattered every rumor I had ever heard about her. She apologized. She admitted that the leak investigation had been rushed. That the board was pressuring her for answers. That she had trusted the initial report without digging deep enough. She said she remembered sending that midnight email now, but in the chaos of the fallout, she had overlooked her own role in the timeline. Her voice trembled slightly as she said she had built her reputation on control. On never appearing uncertain. And when the company was threatened, she reacted like a commander under siege. Not like a leader. The elevator gave a small metallic groan above us, reminding us how fragile control really is. She slid down slowly until she was sitting on the floor, her back against the mirrored wall. The reflection showed not a CEO, but a woman cornered by expectations. I hesitated, then sat down too. We talked. Not about spreadsheets or audits. About pressure. About fear. She told me she had taken over Varelli after her father's sudden passing. That half the board doubted her because she was young. Because she was a woman. Because she didn't inherit experience, only responsibility. Every mistake felt like proof to them that she didn't belong. And when the leak happened, she panicked. Listening to her, something inside me shifted. I had built a silent resentment toward her over the past weeks. I had painted her as the villain in my story. But villains rarely cry quietly when they think no one notices. The elevator lights flickered again. She laughed softly, almost bitterly, and said maybe being trapped like this was the universe forcing her to slow down. To actually look at the people who worked for her instead of just their performance metrics. I admitted that I should have defended myself better. That silence can look like guilt. That fear can cost you your voice. Hours seemed to pass, though it was probably less than one. We heard distant footsteps at one point. Someone shouting. The sound of tools clanging against metal. Rescue was coming. But something else had already begun. She stood up and straightened her blazer, as if preparing to step back into her role. Yet her eyes were different now. Softer. Clearer. She told me that when those doors opened, things would change. Not dramatically. Not in a grand public announcement. But deliberately. True to her word, the next day an internal review was reopened. IT logs were re-examined. Security footage from the night of the breach revealed an external contractor accessing the server room after hours. A vulnerability in the firewall was discovered. The leak had nothing to do with my login. A formal apology was issued in the company-wide meeting. My name was cleared, but what mattered more than that was what happened after. Aria began hosting monthly open forums. No assistants, no hierarchy, just employees speaking openly about concerns. She started staying later, not to monitor productivity, but to understand workflow bottlenecks. She asked questions instead of assuming answers. And something remarkable happened. Productivity improved. Morale rose. People smiled more. As for me, I was offered a lead analyst position on a new transparency initiative project. Not as compensation, as trust. One evening, weeks after the elevator incident, I stayed late reviewing project timelines. The building was quiet again. Daylight had faded into gold across the windows. I walked past the elevator and paused. The doors opened smoothly this time. Inside, the lights were bright. The small black dome camera blinked red. Everything normal. But I knew something had shifted in that confined space between floors 12 and 13. Sometimes growth doesn't come from promotions or profits. It comes from being forced into a corner where honesty is the only exit. Arya never mentioned that day publicly. Neither did I. It wasn't a story for headlines. It was a reminder. A reminder that power doesn't mean perfection. That leadership doesn't mean immunity from fear. That silence can destroy trust, but truth can rebuild it. Months later, Varelli Tech secured an even larger partnership than the one it had lost. The board's confidence in Arya strengthened. But more importantly, the employees' faith in her deepened. One afternoon, she stopped by my desk. Not to check a report. Just to ask how my mother was doing. It was a small question. But it meant everything. Because in that moment, I realized something profound. The elevator hadn't just trapped two people. It had stripped away titles. And in that stripped space, vulnerability built something stronger than authority ever could. If this story touched your heart even a little, if you believe that honesty can heal broken trust and that leaders are still human beneath the titles, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who may be struggling silently in their own elevators. And before we close, I have one special request. Comment the word truth below if you believe that even the hardest conversations can lead to unexpected change. Because sometimes, being stuck is the only way forward. That afternoon, sunlight flooded through the glass lobby as employees moved in and out, unaware of how close everything had come to unraveling weeks before. Life looked ordinary, calm, predictable, but I had learned something extraordinary. Kindness is not weakness. Accountability is not defeat. And second chances are not given, they are earned through courage. The elevator between floors 12 and 13 still runs every day. And every time I step inside, I remember that the most powerful words ever whispered to me were not orders or threats. They were an invitation. No cameras in here. Tell me the truth. And because we did, everything changed.